Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do a whole new entry here, once again based on one of your newer suggestions. Please keep them coming. I'm going to go ahead and talk about a few more videos for this go around and then give this series a rest and then start focusing on another new series soon. So thank you so much for your suggestions. Please keep them coming. As far as this entry here, it has to do with a relatively somewhat new phenomenon, a new mystery associated with a skin disease, and there's a bit of controversy also tied to it, and so I'll present at least everything that people claim associated with this disease on one side, and then the detractors stating on the other side. Who's right or who's wrong, that's not something that I'm going to mention here in this video. That's for anyone else to claim elsewhere, but at least whenever I present everything here, it's up to yourself to then decide afterward what you think is going on with regards to the disease. And interestingly enough, it also ties in to the rise of social media, and I'll mention more on that here in a minute. It has to do with this. It's again a strange, mysterious condition known as Morgellons. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the interesting info associated with this disease. So what is this Morgellons? Well, again, it's something that's relatively new. If you wanted to pinpoint to a specific time period whenever it started to gain popularity, you could probably go back to about the early 2000s, so not that far back. And then as far as what its conditions are, it's this. It's a form of skin disease that people state whenever they have it. It's almost like having something under the skin that feels very weird, like it's almost like ants crawling under the skin, an almost fire type, almost fire-like sensation. People also claim a strong irritation. They keep picking at these lesions that start forming on their skin. Whenever that happens, it just creates more lesions afterward. But the end result is the most mysterious part. People apparently state they find these fibers, almost like these cotton-like fibers, growing out from those lesions, and then when they take the results straight to any kind of skin condition or a care specialist, someone that analyzes these things, they are not able to find out exactly where it comes from, but still those physicians or those skin specialists do come up with one conclusion, which again ties in to a bit of controversy. And as far as who has this, it's apparently pretty rare. Less than 1,000 people seem to have this new diagnosis on a yearly basis. Most countries apparently have someone with this disease outside of Greenland. For some reason, Greenland doesn't seem to have it. And then whether someone has it just randomly, like in other words, you don't have to be a specific race or a specific work condition or a specific sector. Anyone can have it, apparently. It just happens straight out of the blue. And once you have it, it could be just for a short time period, or as others are experiencing, it could be apparently for a lifetime. The information, though, is again so rare associated with this condition, and when that happens, there's just not too much info to present or to study or to analyze afterward. Now, as far as the controversy associated with this condition, it's this. This is what can be considered something like coming from, according to one side, coming from people's imagination, and it has to do more with this. Apparently the diagnosis is delusional parasitosis. It's the idea that people are claiming something is happening to them, when in fact the people that study it and bring up the results afterward tell them it's not, but the people claiming it still do so, still believe it adamantly, and it just causes them to continue with those conditions, which further makes things worse afterward. And what I mean is this. It all ties to a story associated with a mother who apparently in the early 2000s mentioned that there was something weird growing underneath her son's lip, what looked like some kind of underdeveloped sores. And there was also a complaint of a sensation of bugs from her son, like moving around underneath his skin. And so when she took her son to various people to analyze them, including a pediatrician there in Johns Hopkins, and then also one other person that was was a skin specialist, they in turn stated that it was more along the lines of this. Like the mother was, they suggested at least that the mother was suffering from Munchausen's by proxy, which is almost like a psychiatric, I think I was reading the psychiatric syndrome was the word, where the mother was using, or something along those lines, was using the son to help create some kind of attention to him or to her, and that really there was nothing wrong with the boy himself. That is something that I was reading that was tied in to a lot of other people that were analyzing this, which also ties into results from the CDC. So the CDC came about this and came into play because of social media. So what had happened was, once the mother's story kind of took off, it was during that time period when Facebook was on the rise, when YouTube was coming into its infancy, whenever other places were posting information online, news outlets of sorts were claiming all this stuff, and the more one read, the more it became a form of self-diagnosis. People were reading this and thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, do I have this too? And when that happened, they started realizing, to themselves at least, that yes, I do. And so they spread that information, others caught on, others spread it, and then it just continued from there. And so finally there was some kind of campaign that was set up, apparently due to a research center called Morgellons Research Foundation, which interestingly enough was actually created by that same mother that I was just mentioning a minute ago. She stated, and she crowned that term from a essay called "A Letter to a Friend," who was written back in 1656 by a guy named Sir Thomas Browne. In it, he describes several conditions that just mystified people, including one called Morgellons, where people have these strange hairs growing on their backs. So when she read that, she coined a term. And then so much so was her plight within the cause of her son, thinking there truly is something wrong with her son and no one is taking her seriously, that she started this foundation. And this foundation in turn was the one that was tied to various social media outlets, and then other people began self-diagnosing themselves. It all led to a form of mail and online mail campaign where the CDC finally came into play. And so they in turn created some kind of task force back in the mid-2000s. They studied a bunch of cases. They created something in terms of a bunch of investigations involving cases, involving getting people interviews. I think they went through a bunch of results, like a bunch of studies as well with a bunch of subjects. And in it, they found that various people showed, according to them, some kind of cognitive deficits, and then also clinically significant systems. I don't know exactly if they were meaning like if it was more internal, mental, something along the lines, but they did find this: no parasites, no bacteria, no bugs, nothing was growing within any of those patients, and most of the materials that they found as far as those fibers were actually coming from cotton. It was the skin that was absorbing the cotton that came from their clothes, and the fact that they were picking themselves on those lesions that was causing that cotton to stay underneath their skin, which in a roundabout way kind of makes sense. When you think about it, you have yourself wearing clothes every single day, all this cotton that comes from this clothes. If you have something as far as like an open wound or a cut, it's bound to happen that the cotton can stay underneath that skin whenever the skin heals itself and it grows over, and it's almost like a form of a self-serving prophecy. If people are truly adamant that they believe that they have this weird condition growing within them, and no one is believing them, then they'll pick at it more, thinking that they're righting it, like they're fixing it, in other words, and then that causes the people that are diagnosing them to tell them, you're not really having this happen to you. It's just some form of mental disease or something else involving a form of self-diagnosis. That causes people to do this more and more, which causes the people diagnosing them, telling them that that's causing them more and more of the same stuff. And so it's self-serving. And so that's why it all ties into the notion that I was mentioning earlier, involving a weird term called delusional parasitosis. It's all where it's basically it's in people's minds, and that's the controversy associated with this Morgellons. It's all the notion that everything that people have as far as this disease, it's all tied into their head, and people are fighting on one end, stating that it's not, that it truly is something, and then the other people are stating that no, it is absolutely just truly in their head. Interestingly enough, after all this happened, give it about another 10 years, and I haven't heard too much of it. This is again the first time that I'm running into it, as I mentioned earlier. So whether this truly took off back in the mid 2000s, it seems to has died down now, and something else has come into play when it comes to this. You'll always have somebody online stating that there's some kind of new disease happening, and it does merit discussion and people trying to figure out what's going on. But it kind of goes to show that give passage of time, and you will always have something else die down and then something else replace it afterward. But as far as anything else, as far as Morgellons, there really isn't much info to showcase whether it's truly out there as some kind of disease, some kind of symptom that people have. It's still up to debate, but the people that are claiming it absolutely still say so, and then people claiming otherwise are still stating as well. It's just something that I'm just presenting here as what the facts are. So if anyone has anything else that might have missed, anything else I can post, please post those comments below. If you go online too, you'll get to see all the pictures that people state are associated with Morgellons. And then one last thing to mention too on this, there's even the far conspiracies that Morgellons is more tied on the lines of chemtrails, like the results associated with that. Also, even people stating that it's tied to some kind of aliens, so like people being abducted, having something placed within them from these aliens, almost like a case study of sorts, and then that's why it's unrecognized. People are stating that that's why there's no condition for these, no preset scientific condition, because there's nothing on the books for it, because it's from out of this world. That's just another angle yet I was reading. So all just subject for debate. It's up to you to decide, but that's another interesting angle associated with it. So all right, everyone, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.